Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Pedalshift. On this edition, we're going all the way back to January 2015 for the Pedalshift project number 012. So super early days of the show. Two pieces from this show that I thought were worth revisiting. The first is the guy that I met along with MJ way back, I think it was in 2012, that did the best example of bicycle touring and X that I think has that I've ever encountered, and that's bicycle touring along with a surfing trip. And so we talk all about this. Matt had a really cool setup, and we talk about that in this episode. I connected with Matt a few years after that, a few years ago. So a few years after this episode, a few years ago from now, and he's doing well. And I thought that this would be fun and worth revisiting. But because it is Halloween, I am reminded every Halloween of my dearly departed buddy, Louie the Pug. One of the pictures that we still have up is him in a Halloween costume dressed up as Darth Vader. Yes, a pug dressed as Darth Vader. So every Halloween, I always think back and think very fondly of him. And this story, Louie the Pug Bicycle Touring Experiment number 1 of 1, tells you the story of, well, let's just say that Bellstar is a much better bicycle tourist than Louie ever was. Hope you all enjoy. First off is the journal. If you're new to the show, the journal is where we feature journals from other people, sometimes past ones, sometimes current ones, sometimes ones right in the middle of, sometimes the ones that I'm going to be on. This episode, I want to feature a guy I actually met over on the Oregon coast back in 2012. His name is Matt Weiner, and he did one of the cooler bike touring kind of hybrids that I've ever run across. And it was a combination of a surfing trip by bike. And you can read more about it. It's mattweinersurf.blogspot.com. You can go to the show notes at pedalshift.net to get that link if you'd like. As I mentioned, I met Matt on the Oregon coast in 2012 when I was rolling with Mysterious James. If you've ever read about some of my past Pacific Coast tours, that was one of them. And what was really kind of cool about what Matt did was he was rolling with a modified Bob, one of those single wheel trailers. And what was super cool is he created these really amazing kind of, I don't know how to put it, like bamboo stations so that he could get his surfboard attached directly on the back. And I've got a gorgeous picture in the show notes that you can definitely take a look at. And he just hauled a shortboard all the way down the Oregon coast. And what was super cool about that was he was actually really plugged into what the tide charts were saying. And that's what told him when he wanted to be in certain spots so that he could get in some really cool surfing along the way. So he timed those arrivals at different beaches all the way down the Oregon coast to make sure that he was getting the best waves. My recollection is that at least around the time that we were talking with him and sort of rolling around the same time as him, surf wasn't quite all that awesome, but I understand that there were some better times for him as well. And the reason why I want to mention this is this trip always stuck with me. Using a bike as a method to your adventure madness. I mean, why just bike the Oregon coast when you can bike it and surf it? So have a link in the show notes to the, I think it was somewhere between the third and the fifth day, I guess, of that particular tour. The pictures of Matt and his surfboard and just all the really cool setup that he had. And also some pictures from his blog as well, showing how he built this kind of cool shortboard rack mounted Bob. It's pretty amazing. And you can read much more about what his tour was like. As kind of a special bonus, I mean, I haven't talked to Matt in quite a long time. I think we had connected by email maybe once, I think, before the end of that summer. Just in case his email still worked, I shot him an email earlier this week, and he says that he still uses that same account. So actually, we connected just today before I started recording this podcast, and he said he's stoked that I was inspired enough to continue to talk about that trip from 3-4 seasons ago today. And I want to read this directly. He says, I still think of that trip as being one of the most fulfilling experiences in adventure, risk-taking, and all in all, trying something new. Not to mention a workout whilst carrying a board with me. I totally remember that because, I mean, he had to actually haul a heck of a lot more weight than most of us did. And with the extra rolling resistance, it wasn't easy. but I think that he has so much more satisfaction on that trip just because he was doing something totally different. I mean, we were all just biking the coast, but he was biking the coast and then he was surfing at the same time, which was super cool. He says he hasn't done any other tours quite like that recently, or at least in between the time of that tour and now. Just got married last fall. Congratulations, Matt. And that he's planning to do some weekend trips coming up over on the Washington coast. So I let him know that I was just in his neck of the woods last year when I did the full coast. It's a beautiful area. He's from the near Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. And having all of that in your backyard and having that kind of an adventure in your pocket from the past. I mean, I'm positive that Matt's going to be out there doing more cool tours like this again. So I'm really excited to feature this. You definitely want to check it out. Just a few of the posts and some of the pictures from his blog, but use this as a way to think about what can you do by bike to extend and expand your next tour, because Matt did it a few years ago and it was really cool. Now it's time for this episode's bike touring story. Every few episodes or so, I'll be sharing a little bit more of a produced segment featuring a bike touring story. This is a little bit shorter than the ones that we've had in the past, but it's a little bit more fun as well. I hope you enjoy it. Louie the Pug, bike touring experiment number 1 of 1. A couple of years ago, I was on my last night of a bike tour on the Pacific Coast, and there was a guy I was in the campsite with. This was just outside of San Francisco. Beautiful, beautiful redwoods, Samuel P. Taylor Park. And he had a cat with him, of all things. After going hundreds of miles, not seeing any kind of animals other than those in the woods, I see a guy with a domesticated cat. We had just lost a cat back at home, and I was totally enamored with the idea of bringing a pet along, especially a loved pet, along for the experience. And I had a million questions for this guy. You know, what do you feed her? Does she stay in the tent? Where's her litter box? But the last thing, he just sort of gestured the entire woods and said, "This is her litter box." So after having a couple of adult beverages with this guy and learning a little bit more about what it was like to have a pet along for a bike tour, it was resolved. If a cat can go bike touring, surely a dog can. Surely Louie the Pug could. Louie is my beloved, about 10-year-old pug. And if you know anything about pugs, well, they're kind of like giant cartoons. They are bug-eyed and weird, and they have no snouts, and they are the strangest, oddest type of dog out there. I just happen to like mine. He's kind of a tough little kid, so I figured, you know what, if there's ever a breed that could do a bike tour, the compact, very, very strong-willed pug is that type of dog. So I went out and I secured a trailer. You know, one of those Bob type of trailers, the ones with a single wheel. Then I got the largest dog crate that I could fit inside that Bob trailer. In fact, it said something like on the label,
"The Cadillac of Pet Comfort."
So I got all of these things together. I got Louie, I threw him into the car, and then we went to this one trail nearby where I lived, and we were going to go out for a test. Test number 1 of Louie the Pug going on bike tour. Got him all loaded up, and he was kind of excited. You know, he said, "Hey, this is different." "Oh, cool. Sure, I will go inside of this. Sure, I will go inside of this beautiful crate that's been specially purchased just for me." And then that excitement sort of led to some confusion as we started to roll off. And I'm getting all excited. I'm thinking, wow, what are the great campsites that we're going to go to? What are all the different places we can go do together? And then I started to note that his confusion started to turn into fear. And then soon fear turned into anger, and then the anger turned into, well, barking. So 1 mile into what was supposed to be a 20-mile ride, well, the bike touring experiment was over. My dog does not like biking. End of experiment. Louie hates biking. Epilogue. Flash forward a couple of years. And have I introduced my girlfriend?
Kimberly Wilson?
No, I definitely haven't.
Of Tranquility du Jour.
Kimberly wanted to bike with Louie in her cruiser amongst the redwoods. I'll let her tell this part.
So we're in Burlington Campground, the most beautiful place in America, and we're there with our darling pug. And we knew that things hadn't gone so well on the bike before.
I made sure to remind her of the failed experiment.
However, Louie and I have something special, and I thought I could maybe make it happen. And I have a basket in front. So I got out an organic cotton, fluffy, black and white toile, of course, towel, and put it in the white wire basket.
There's no way that towel is going to work. There's no way this is going to work.
And I sat him in there, and he sat right down, happy as a clam, and we took off. And I was over the moon. So we just took off on this little tiny circle, kind of around the tiny campsite that we were in, or the little site in the campground that we were in.
I am positive that this is going to be barking, and there's going to be terror, and there's going to be...
And there was no resistance. He didn't try to jump out. I had his leash and was kind of holding on to it in case he decided to. There was no yipping. There was nothing. He seemed quite enthralled with the experience.
He loves it.
So, of course, I continued. And before you know it, I'm like biking around the entire campground with him and over the moon because we couldn't believe that this was actually possible. And Louie was so happy.
Bottom line, Louie loves biking, just on his own terms. Louie likes biking so long as he's on a pink bike and in the front basket.
Honey, can you stand it?
Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.